Hi, this is Chase, KHEAA Outreach Counselor for Far Western Kentucky, and I'm here with you today to walk through the 2021-2022 FAFSA. Now, for today's video, we're not going into any of the rationale behind why we file the FAFSA or what the FAFSA connects us to, all those sources of financial aid. Today, I am showing you in a very practical way exactly what it looks like when you walk through screen by screen. So, if you're in the process of completing the FAFSA and you are a dependent student, meaning you're a student who has at least one parent who will be providing information on the FAFSA, this video is for you. So, in order to get started, click on the I am the student button. Now, hopefully by now, all of you all have an FSA ID. Remember, that is that username and that password that you're going to use every year in order to sign into your FAFSA. If you don't, no problem. Just click that Create One button, and you'll be linked to create that account, and you can come right back to the FAFSA when you're done. Now, for the purposes of today's exercise, I am using a test data website. So that means I'm going to be using some placeholders because this is not a real FAFSA. This is just a test for the purposes of us going through this together. Now, for your FAFSA, as you complete it, one of the most important things to think about is that you enter the information as accurately as is possible. So making sure that everything is as accurate as is possible. That means having those tax documents, the 1040, the W-2s, the records of investments, our social security cards, all of those things in front of us so we know we're entering data as accurately as is humanly possible. And that will only help you as you go through the FAFSA. So you can see here for this student's FAFSA, his name's Abe, last name, he's going to start on the 2021-2022 FAFSA. Remember, the year you select should always correspond with the year you hope to receive financial aid. So if your freshman year is fall of 2021, spring 2022, the 2021-2022 FAFSA is your FAFSA. Next, we're asked to create a save key. I often advise students that a save key could be a simple 4-digit code that you could easily remember. The purpose for this is if we have to leave the FAFSA, when we return, we can enter that save key and it will take us to the last place we click the word save. And I'll show you where that is in just a moment. So I'm going to make a save key and I'm going to continue. Hang tight if the system is processing. Remember, FAFSA just opened up for this year for October the 1st. So we have a lot of people trying to complete the FAFSA at the same time. Here we have a frequently asked questions section. Let's go ahead and skip that for now, but just know if you needed to get some of these questions answered, you click the box and you'll get some more information. So click Next. Now, for Abe here, luckily you can see a lot of this information is already here. That's not because I logged in early and went ahead and filled this in. That's because of that FSA ID. So when you create that FSA ID, you'll find that a lot of pieces of information will come into that FAFSA already. So that saves you some work in terms of data entry. I do want to point out along the top, we have a gray navigation bar, several different options. I would stray away from exit or reset the FAFSA. But one of the important ones here is the save option. So regularly click that save button as we go through. FAFSA does have some autosave features built in, but I do want you to click that every so often so that if we do get logged out, we can enter that save key and go back to that last screen. Another feature I want to point out is a navigation bar here. I'll talk more about this in a moment, but this will always tell us what section we're working on and help us to gauge our progress. So for this screen, I am going to fill in an initial. Now, see, we already have the information here. So I am just going to create a phone number and enter that info. Here, we already have the address. Remember, that is all from that FSA ID. So this student, Abe, is a resident of Maryland. Let's say, yes, he has lived in Maryland for at least 5 years. The next question is going to ask about his citizenship. So we select yes, he is a citizen, no, but he's an eligible non-citizen, or no, he is not a citizen or eligible non-citizen. In this case, let's say Abe is a citizen. I also want to point out that some of these questions, I get a lot of questions from parents saying, are they asking from my perspective or my students? Always reference this banner right here in blue that says student information. That will always tell you whose perspective we're answering from. Click next at the end of every screen. Here's a screen that trips up students just a little bit, so hang tight here. What will your high school completion status be when you begin college in the 2021-2022 year? For most traditional students graduating high school and going right into college, you'll have a high school diploma. But you can also indicate if you have a GED or were homeschooled, or if none of the above are applicable. The next question asks us about what degree or certificate we're working on. Here we get the opportunity to say if we're working on a bachelor's degree, an associate's degree, a certificate program, or graduate school work. For freshmen in college who are entering for the first time, I want to make a note, even if you want to become a doctor or a lawyer and you know you'll be going to medical school or law school one day, if you have not completed that bachelor's degree, it's so important that you select first bachelor's degree. Your financial aid options change a little bit as you move from undergrad to graduate school, so it's so important that you go ahead and select first bachelor's degree, or all of your options may not be there. What will your college grade level be? For most students, never attended college first year. If you are a returning student, however, you'll select the appropriate college year. And are you interested in being considered for work study? This is a great opportunity for me to show you how these question marks work. If I'm not sure what a question is, I can click on that question mark and I'm going to get a clarification. In this case, we're talking about work study, and work study is a program where a student can get a job on campus. They're able to earn a paycheck to help go toward the cost of their education expenses. I often recommend that students do say yes. It does not automatically sign them up for a job, but it does put them in the running for that program. So I go ahead and advise that most students go ahead and answer yes. Are you male or female? In this case, let's say Abe is a male. If you are a male, automatically you'll get this question about the selective service system. That's effectively the draft. If you're already registered, you can select yes, but if not, select no. If you want to register through the FAFSA for the selective service system, you would select yes. If not, you will select no, and you can complete that registration independently. But I will say it's fairly easy for you to go ahead, kick in that registration just by selecting yes. Additionally, if you're not quite 18 yet and you go ahead and select yes, when you turn 18, that registration will still kick in if you select yes for this question. Remember, to receive federal financial aid, gentlemen over the age of 18 will have to be registered for the selective service system. Driver's license number if you have one. So if you do not have a driver's license, you can skip this screen. If you do have one, you will enter that driver's license as well as the state that your driver's license is issued in. All right, now we have some different questions coming up, still about the student. Are you a foster youth, or were you at any time in the foster care system? Let's say no. Remember, I said this is a dependent student's FAFSA. So this is a student who lives at home with one or potentially both parents. High school completed by parent one. How far did parent one get in college? So let's say mom is the parent who's most likely to help me with this process. I'm going to use mom anytime the FAFSA asks me about parent one. Let's say mom went to college, so I'll select college. It doesn't make a difference which parent is parent one versus which is parent two. The important thing is you remain consistent. So for me, as Abe, parent one is going to be my mom, parent two is going to be my dad. So let's say dad made it through high school. Next, and I want to show you this navigation bar because we see a little change as we move into this screen. If a section has a green check mark, that means it's completed. So you've answered every question in that section and you're able to move forward. The pencil inside of the blue circle indicates you are still working on that section. This bar is a great opportunity for you to navigate backward if you need to return to a section, but just know you won't be able to move forward until you have completed the previous section. Here, what we're doing is we're searching for our high school. So I live in the city of Paducah. So let's say I attend Paducah Tillman High School. I just enter the first couple of words of my high school, and I select the state in which my high school is located. In this case, let's say Kentucky. Click the blue Confirm button, and that is going to link you to your official high school listing. Press Select, and you can see the rest of the information is populated. I'm also linked to my official high school listing. So if my school receives FAFSA completion reports, they can see that I have or have not completed based on linking myself to my high school. Click Next. Here, and this screen looks very similar to the previous screen, but this screen is the screen on which we're going to indicate any of the colleges we plan to attend. Now, for the sake of time, I'm not going to select a ton of schools, but I will show you how you add a college. So first, select a college. Oftentimes, I leave the city blank, and I begin just by typing in the school's name, in this case, Murray. I'll select Search, and right there, I have Murray State University. Click on the checkbox to the left of the school name, and then click the blue check button. Once we do this, we get another drop-down box that encourages us to give some more information. Here we can indicate, are you going to live on campus? So will you have a dorm room? Or are you going to live with a parent? So you're staying at home and you're doing something called commuting. You drive into school every day. Or are you living off campus in a house or an apartment? In this case, let's say on campus. This allows the financial aid office, when they're creating my financial aid estimate, to see that, yes, I want the cost of on-campus housing put into my financial aid estimate. So if you plan to live on campus, or even if you just want to see what that would look like in terms of cost, select that on-campus option. If I want to add more schools, because remember, I can list up to 10, I can select the Add More School option. If I don't, however, I'll select the Next button. Here is the point at which parents always ask me, is this asking about me or is this asking about my student? Remember, student information in this banner, so we are still from student's perspective. As of today, let's say that I am single, I'm not married. Here are 2 more questions. Do you now or will you have children who receive more than half their support for you between July the 1st of 2021 and June the 30th of 2022? Similar question about dependents right here. So not children, but individuals who I provide more than half of their support for. In this case, let's say I'm a high school student, I'm about to graduate, I don't have children, I don't have dependents. I will select No and move forward. Next, we have a series of different circumstances that you need to read through. Read through each of these individual circumstances. If any of them pertain to you, you'll select that checkbox. If not, you'll select none of the above. So in this case, none of these actually pertain to this student whose FAFSA I'm working on. So I'm going to click none of the above and click Next. Next question, on or after July 1st, 2020, were you homeless or were you self-supporting or at risk of being homeless? Let's say no. Now, remember at the beginning I said this is a dependent student's FAFSA. That means this student probably lives at home with one or both parents. The good news about dependent versus independent is you do not have to make that determination. Based on those questions we answer, the FAFSA will give us a determination. And in this case, we see, yes, Abe is a dependent student. Here you have the option to say you will or you are unable to provide parent information. Students, if the FAFSA says you are dependent, almost always you will be required to provide that parent information. So unless you have a pretty compelling reason, make sure you select I will provide parental information and click Next. At this point, the FAFSA actually changes, and you can see that reflected in this banner here. So from this point forward, we're actually answering questions based on our parents. So as of today, what's the marital status of your parents? Let's say they're married. And let's say they got married in December of 1999. Now, really quickly, I do want to step back because one of the common questions that I get asked deals with whether or not, the cases of blended families, whose information does a student use? So, if I'm in a case where my parents are divorced or separated, what I would do is I would indicate when they became divorced, and I would say whose information will be provided. The test is which individual do you spend more time with? Do you spend more than 50% of your time at your mom's house or at your dad's? If it's mom's, I'll select her info and move forward. If it's dad's, I would do the same. Now, if mom or dad are remarried, remember, married or remarried is their marital status, and then you would indicate the date that they were married or remarried. Let's say that I live with mom more than half of the time. If mom is remarried, I would indicate her status as remarried, and I would change the date to the appropriate month and year that she got remarried. Remember, if your parent who you spend more than 50% of your time with is remarried, it is both that biological parent and the step parent's information that will be accounted for on the FAFSA. So keep that in mind. So let's say married. Now I'm going to just enter placeholders. Like I said, this is not an actual FAFSA. And let's say Smith C. And then for date of birth, we're just going to enter a random date and an email address. Select next. Remember, this is parent 1 whose info that we just entered. This is parent 2. It doesn't make a difference who is who as long as you keep it consistent. So parent 2, social, Smith, our first initial, let's do R, and then a birth date. Once we've completed that information, we will move forward. Have your parents lived in Maryland for at least 5 years? Yes. Here's a screen I do want to show you for just a moment. This is a screen that's all about household size. Based on the FAFSA, we already see that both of my parents and myself live in the household. In this first box with the cursor, that wants to know if I have any other siblings who live at home. Let's say I have a younger sister, I would indicate that right there. Right here is other dependents that your parents provide more than half of their support and who they will continue to support through next year. This isn't the most common scenario, but if you live in an intergenerational household where maybe your parents support a grandparent or a relative, this may be the space to indicate that. Right here in this grayed out box, this is a calculation of all of these different fields. When I work with families, the question I always ask, if everybody is home for dinner, how many people is that? That's what this number right here should represent. If everyone's home and accounted for, that's what that number should be. Next, we indicate how many of those individuals will be in college. Remember, do not include your parents if they are in college as well. So if it's just Abe, we're going to type a 1. Now let's move into the tax filing information. Most of our parents who have filed taxes, we will select their tax filing status, which is that they have already completed. Then we indicate what type of tax return. Many folks, it will be the IRS 1040, but make sure you do select the appropriate type. And what is their tax filing status? Do they file as joint returns, filing separate returns? If your parent is single, not married, they may file as single or head of household. The first page of the 1040, which is the tax return, toward the top, you'll see a little section that will give you this information if you're not quite sure. So let's select married, filed, joint return. At this point, what you could do is link to the IRS. Now, this is a test FAFSA, so this is not a real FAFSA, not a real student, and there aren't real taxes that we're linking to these fictional students. So I won't have the opportunity to link those taxes. But if you were to link your taxes, you would click the blue button. Parent at this point would be asked to sign in with their FSA ID and then would be redirected to the IRS government website. From there, you're able to fill in a little more information, specifically your address exactly as it appears on your 1040, on your tax return, and then you can transfer that data in. For the purposes of this exercise, though, we're going to click Next. You'll see if we skip the data retrieval tool, we're told it's faster and easier with the data retrieval tool, and that is absolutely the case. It additionally verifies your income and shows that it's correct in real time, so as soon as you pull it in. I always advise using the data retrieval tool if it's possible. We know sometimes it's not, but sometimes it is. In this case, if you cannot use it for some reason, say no thanks. If you can, go ahead and link to the IRS. Now, as I'm manually entering data, what I will have to do is look at the IRS form and specifically what lines are indicated on the FAFSA. And the first question asks about adjusted gross income. Remember, this is based on 2019's taxes. So let's say my parents' gross income was $85,000. The next question we're going to be asked is how much did parent one make if our parents are married versus how much parent two made? This is the space where most folks need their W-2s. So if you can pull those out, pull those W-2s out, we're going to say that parent one makes $45,000. Parent two makes $40,000. Realize most of your numbers will not come out as cleanly and evenly as this. I'm using these just for the purposes of illustration. So keep in mind you want to use the accurate data from those forms. So it's so important to have those tax forms in front of us. Now, parent income tax, also information that could be gathered from the 1040. Let's say that they pay about $7,500 in taxes. Much of this information will be imported if you link your taxes, so it saves a lot of data entry. Here, I won't read through all of these, but just know that these next few screens are other portions of untaxed benefits that your parents may have. Take a look, see if any of them pertain to you all. If they do, you'll fill those in. If not, you'll click Next. Here, and this is a very common one that I encounter, child support paid. If you have paid any child support as a parent, here you will indicate how much you paid for the whole year. A couple of other questions you want to read through, but if you only received child support on this next screen, that is where you'll indicate that. Right here, child support received. Read through all of these scenarios and make sure none of them pertain to you before moving forward. If they do, so for instance, this one, a payment to a tax-deferred pension or retirement savings plan, it's fairly common for people with full-time jobs to have some portion of this. So I see I need to check the W-2, boxes 12A through D, and let's say I have an item with code D that has $646 in it. I would enter that amount and move next. If you were to receive workers' compensation or short-term disability benefit, you would indicate that here on the last line. So after I answer all these questions, I receive something called an asset threshold. As of today, do my parents' assets exceed $6,000? Now, assets, it's important to note, do not include your home, the land that your home is attached to, or your vehicles, or your retirement. This is largely going to be in the form of cash, savings, and checking, investments and other real estate property, and maybe business expenses. If your business or business assets, if your business has more than 100 employees. So if I can answer yes, then I need to start accounting for those assets. Let's say it's yes because I have about $10,000 put back in savings. If I have other investments, I would indicate those here. If not, I put a 0. If I own a business or an investment farm that includes 100 individuals, I would include those assets as well. But if I don't, I put a 0. Then I click Next. We then get to the student portion. If your student has filed taxes, you're going to select Already Completed and go through the same process you went through with the parent financials. If your student did not, you will select Not Going to File. Notice the data retrieval tool is not an option because in this case, the student did not file taxes. Select Next. How much did I earn? Sometimes we've made a little bit of money, but not quite enough to file taxes. So let's say I made $350. I would indicate that here. If I hadn't earned anything, I would put a 0. But in this case, let's say Abe earned $350. Next. All of these other types of benefits are going to be asked about. It's the same as the parent financial section, so read through those carefully. Remember, this case, we're talking about students. So this would be if the student had paid or received child support. If the parent receives it, it goes back in the parent financial section. And be sure not to list that twice. We don't want to double claim that benefit. Click Next. As of today, total current balance of cash, savings, and checking, let's say it's about $1,200. No investments, no businesses. If the student did have these, you would want to enter these amounts, but many students will not. Click Next. Are you a preparer? This is rare. Click No and Next. So right now, Abe is going to have a breakdown of all of the questions that he's answered throughout this entire FAFSA. This is a good opportunity for you to look at your questions, make sure everything looks correct, everything looks good. And when you scroll to the bottom, you'll be asked to move to the next screen to sign and submit. If we are ready to submit our FAFSA, click the blue Provide Student Signature, read through those terms and conditions, and if you agree, you'll select Agree, click Next, and click the blue Sign this FAFSA. The parent signature on the right, it's almost the identical process. Now, in this case, we don't have an FSA ID for this parent, so I'm going to show you what to do if you do not actually have a parent FSA ID, but typically you will. Click on Parent 1, Agree or Disagree, and Next. And here is where you would enter this information. Now, in this case, I'm not going to be able to provide an FSA ID because this is, like I said, a fictional set of parents for a fictional student. So what I'm going to do is select that I want to print a signature page. If you're having difficulty with your signature, with your FAFSA, sometimes a parent can print a signature page. It is not the mechanism that I recommend the most because when you print it, you do have to sign, you do have to mail it in, and sometimes that takes a little bit of time. However, if it is the only option that you've got, it's better to go ahead and do that than to not sign at all. Once I complete that, I'll hit Submit My FAFSA now. Now I have a confirmation page. The good news is I can check my expected family contribution. That's that number that captures how much the family can contribute to the cost of your education. It will tell me if I'm eligible for grants, for loans, and give a bit more information. I thank you so much for joining me and completing this FAFSA tutorial. I know it's a quick walkthrough of a lot of these things, and hopefully it's answered your questions. I encourage you all to complete this process as soon as possible. And if you have any other questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to us at KHEAA. We are always happy to help you and always looking forward to helping you complete your FAFSAs. Until next time, thank you all so much and good luck.